Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Sonic Adventure. In the last part we went through a couple more stages of Sonic, and now we're in Twinkle Park, which is probably the most varied level in the game, as we even start with a little bit of a go-karting segment. Though, weirdly, we do have to catch our cart before we can actively go along it. I don't need to destroy all the enemies for this. You can just choose whichever your favorite color is and go from there. I don't think there's any handling differences between the various carts as far as I'm aware. They'll do some research on that for post-edit stuff in the case there actually is. Once you're in the cart itself, though, control changes a little bit. You're now using proper driving controls, so you do actually have to steer left and right in a way where you're constantly always moving forward as well. But the more rings you get, the faster your top speed gets, as well as the faster your acceleration gets. And there is, I believe, special missions here for clearing it under a certain amount of time or getting a certain amount of money. Something to keep in mind as well, you want to lean off the gas when you're making turns if you're trying to make them in very smooth ways. Worth noting, though, this isn't the first time this song has shown up in the series or even on this channel, as this is actually a remix from Sonic 3D Blast, namely Panic Puppet. And it's absolutely my favorite version of this song. I love this rendition so much. In fact, the song that plays in the level after this, because if you haven't noticed yet, by and large, most levels have 2 or 3 songs to them, is actively an unused track from Sonic 3D Blast. Be careful as you go faster, though, because as you can see, you can get a lot of airtime over certain hills in this. And I think you can fall off the circuit and lose a life. If I've done it maybe once, but if I've done it, it's enough to know that I don't want to do it again. Hence why I stay towards the center of the stage as often as I can here. The go-kart section is, in the main story, harmless, a little fun. Helps that this is also the only story we actively do it in across the various campaigns. But now we're in the main part of Twinkle Park. Welcome to Pleasure Castle. And we got this really neat looking set piece here with the roller coaster. I've always liked how this looked, even if it takes a good bit to get through it. So now that we're in this section, there's actually a surprising amount of just minor mechanics here, like this random bowling minigame where you can hit the pins and get some rings afterwards. I believe there's missions in this particular stage that require getting a certain amount of rings to begin with, so this is your best friend for doing those. Otherwise, things to watch out for, there's these giant bulbous enemies like that if you homing attack into them, you're likely just to bounce off them, as you need to actively hit them in the head for that to work, and it's a little hard to do that, I won't lie. Sonic Adventure, I tend to ignore most of the enemies unless I absolutely have to when playing as most of the characters. Some characters not as much for reasons we'll talk about when we reach their campaigns, but as Sonic, Tails, blah blah blah, I tend to just ignore the enemies and go through the level, which admittedly is kind of what I do in mainline Sonic anyway. A lot of enemies, unless they are for homing attack change or things like that, I just tend to ignore them, which is kind of a problem with Sonic in general, really, where the enemies themselves, while they can be themed around the levels, they're either too far out of the way to be annoying, or they're placed so directly in your path you're likely to run into them on a first playthrough, which is just going to upset a player in a radically different way. Looking at you, Metropolis Zone. Some games get it more right than others. That's actually one thing I like about Sonic Unleashed, because it has the separate gameplay style for fighting enemies specifically. I don't mind fighting enemies in that game at all. But for games like this, it's just so easy to get around them, it's not really worth going after them unless you're going for high score stuff or missions. I feel out of like the non-Sonic Unleashed based games, the ones that have used enemies the best is probably Frontiers, because it has so many different mini-boss types, I guess. And yeah, I guess probably something like Unleashed or Generations. And even then, that's because so many of them are used in ways where they are a part of the platforms rather than obstacles within the level. Badnik bouncing especially can be helpful with that, and I feel like they got really good about doing that in Generations. Although the classic games are also pretty good about it if you know the level design well enough. Twinkle Park's not the most interesting level. It can kind of go by pretty quickly, but I like its variety and how flashy it is. Having a theme park themed level in a game like this I think is a really neat idea.
Welcome to Twinkle Park.
Oh, shoot! I've lost Amy! I bet that robot hauled butt after her. I'd better catch her before it does.
You know, I can't help but wonder in moments like this, if this game ever gets a remake, if they'll do the Sonic 06 thing where we just swap characters every here and again. So now that we've gotten through all that, that key card has spawned in, which allows us to access our next level immediately. Weird looking robot? Yeah, I saw it. It went into that big building. So our next destination's in here. which requires an ID card. Gee, I wonder what just spawned in. For now, though, let's go do our lap and most notably take a look at the Burger Girl, see how she's doing. And all I did was eat a burger. I'm such a loser, but just going in was a big step for me. You know what? Good for you. Finally, I feel like someone was staring at me as Gump. What was that all about? I mean, you got some pretty good information you could use to guess that, buddy. Now, I remember distinctly my first playthrough. I looked away from the screen when the key spawned in, so I heard the cutscene, but I didn't see the cutscene. So this is actually one of the few cases where, in my case at least, the amount of NPCs hinting towards where to go next actually really came in handy. It's actually where I started really exploring around with the NPCs and talking to them very regularly on my first playthrough. Because it's always neat just to see how their little stories are actually progressing. Now, I haven't tried this in a really long time. I genuinely don't remember what happens in this game if you try to re-enter a stage you've already cleared in the story. Like, say, if you try to go back into Casinopolis or Emerald Coast. I think, for the most part, they block you from re-entering old levels in some form. Like, I know at some points you can't access Emerald Hill for a little bit due to story stuff that's blocking it in a different storyline. At least I believe that's the case. If you can re-enter the stages, you might be able to tackle the higher level missions at that point, though. And you know what? I'll see if I can test it out between when I am doing this particular commentary and when I do the second pass for the on-screen text and corrections and all that. Because if you can, hey, it's a neat way to do it, especially because you can use the overworld for that. And in fact, one of the mods that we actually have installed for this playthrough that's with the Sonic Adventure Mod Manager, when I listed those back in like part 2, one of them is the time of day thing. That means if you load into a story after you've beaten it, that the time of day will continue to pass by using, I think, the train over and over again. So in the case you want to, like, see certain things at day at night, you can just do that, because otherwise I think you're stuck during the daytime, which, it's a minor thing, but I can see why someone would want that back. Other ones are like the onion skin mod, which actually adds in an old onion skin effect on your running animation to enhance the feel of speed that was removed in DX for some reason. Speaking of speed, though, welcome to Speed Highway. This is my favorite level in the game. It is probably the most linear mission in the game outside of Windy Valley, but I think they do a good job of having small alternate routes to change the ways you're going around in such a way that it feels really good. Although you get occasional weird control moments like right here. So, effectively what's going on there, because I got the speed shoes just then, Sonic was moving so fast he actually started sort of clipping into the ground, I believe. So he ended up trying to move off the platform, and if you fall off there, I believe that might be if that's not a death, there's a platform below that'll catch you, but it's just a slower route. There are some parts of this level I think I haven't seen in probably over a decade at this point, because I seldom take the route they're on. Also, we get to ride a helicopter, and that's just cool. Something pretty frequently in this level, though, are little rockets you can grab onto that'll send you in a certain direction. You can control yourself after the rocket stops moving, but otherwise you're locked in. Sonic Adventure 2 would reuse these in more interesting ways during its equivalent to Knuckles stages from this game. So for right now, let's actually talk about something I haven't talked about yet, the voice actors for the game. This voice cast is pretty famous at this point, because Sonic voice casts are always talked about in some form. Sonic in this game is voiced by Ryan Drummond, who was the voice of Sonic from here until Sonic Heroes, barring some of the handheld games. Sorry, I always gotta stay silent for that. I love that moment right there. It's just, the way the music here is so cool. This is one of my favorite tracks in the game once again. Other roles we've seen Ryan Drummond in is actually an LP I've done a while back. He was Elliot G. Ballad in Blue Stinger, a Dreamcast survival horror game that is extraordinarily silly and doesn't feel the best, but I still love all the same. Tails in this game is Corey Bringus, who is the voice of Tails here, and is one of the several voice actors in the game who's also in Frogger, The Great Quest. He was Blair in that. Otherwise, both of these two previous actors were also in Backyard Baseball, back when that was a series. Knuckles in this game is Michael McGarren, who is Knuckles. He was Ace Ventura in a video game based off that IP. But his most recent role was as Jansen in Lost Odyssey, which, that was a good while back at this point anyway. Amy in this game is voiced by Jennifer Doolard, who was basically only ever the voice of Amy. She was the voice of Amy from here until Sonic Advance 3, which is the case for several of these voice actors who stuck around because they were replaced when the 4 Kids cast became the main cast starting in Shadow the Hedgehog. Big the Cat, we already heard his voice when we talked to him earlier. His is probably the funniest voice actor, as he is voiced by John St. John, who most of us will probably know as the voice of Duke Nukem, alongside Rolento in some of the Final Fight stuff. He was Tim back in Blue Stinger, the guy on the boat at the very start of that game. A couple of incidental voices, I believe, in Half-Life. I think he's Omega once we get to Sonic Heroes. And he was very recently the Postal Dude in Postal 4. Eggman in this is voiced by Dean Bristow, who was Watson in a Sherlock Holmes game back in '92, but was Dogs in Blue Stinger. In fact, basically the entire voice cast of Blue Stinger is in this game. He was also the voice of Meschief in Diablo 2, but he was Eggman from here all the way technically up until 2008 in some form, with archival audio used in Sonic Riders Lost Gravity. But I think his last game period as the character was Sonic Riders, as he died of a heart attack, I believe, not long before that game released. And the final voice we can talk about right now is the Red Fairy we've seen talking to us a couple of places. They are voiced by Alara Disler, who voiced that character here, a character in Frog of the Great Quest, Princess Darn specific, as well as the unique OCs for Sonic Shuffle, as well as being knights in Sonic Shuffle. Coming up here, though, we can actually see one of the conclusions to one of the plot lines here in Station Square. That dude who's been going on dates the entire game has been going with multiple ladies, and they found out, so I'm assuming the moment we walk away and go into a loading screen, there's just suddenly a man floating in the ocean for suddenly no reason. For now, though, our actual destination is to go into the area where the casino is to trigger a cutscene.
Amy? Oh man, where can she be?
Ah! Sonic! Help!
I'll cut him off at the Mystic Ruins!
Coincidentally, the moment you see that cutscene, the strike ends. So let's go, I guess, check in with the workers, see if they got anything they actually were negotiating for. Also, I don't use it right here, but there is actually a shorter way to get into the train station than me going all the way around. That stairway that was on the left there, that leads directly into the train station. They're considered the exact same map. I just often forget it's there whenever I play this game, although I remember it's there when I'm on the train station side of it usually. It's when I'm in the casino area, I'm just like, oh yeah, no, I need to go through the hotel, and I can't tell why. Alright, let's talk to some people around here really quick. The negotiations went well. All aboard the Mystic Ruins. Hell yeah, workers' rights. Let's go hope Amy's still alive, you know.
Let me go, you hunk of junk! I mean it!
Hey there, Bull Brain! You better give Amy to me or I'll squash ya! Hey, what's happening here?
Oh god, the sun's gone out.
Stop!
Sonic, help me!
Shoot! I've lost her again!
Well, we're seemingly out of luck, but if we talk to this guy, the ship flew by again and headed towards the mountains, so that's our hint to go back in towards where Ice Cap is. As I didn't show it off when we first went to Ice Cap, but if you go down that route further than the Ice Cap door, when you first get there, there's just a block in your way you can't get past. But now that we're at this point in the story, that block is no longer there, so we can move on past that to see what lies further in this slightly different colored mountain that they brought up being a bit different seeming earlier with its dirt. There's also a particular lore element here I was very slow on the uptake of on my first playthrough. But I'll talk more about that in a moment, because over here is actually the entrance to the next level, but it's guarded by a monkey that we cannot destroy. So we need to find a way to destroy the monkey. Hey look, a power-up, I wonder if that allows us to destroy the monkey.
This is the ancient light. Try the lightspeed dash toward the enemy. With this, you can now do the lightspeed attack.
So Sonic's final power-up is the Lightspeed attack, which allows you to charge up your Lightspeed dash and then use it to actively attack enemies. You can attack multiple enemies in a row on the single charge of it. It's a little unwieldy, so it's no wonder it never really made a return, but it can be useful in some cases. So that's the Master Emerald. So the lore tidbit I missed out on, think about where Ice Cap was in Sonic 3. This entire section of the map is actively Angel Island. But more about that when we reach Knuckles' playthrough for reasons. So now that we have the Lightspeed dash, though, we can actively destroy this monkey despite its accursed enclosure. Time for the next stage. Red Mountain is another stage I really like playing through because there's a lot of moments where there's different paths you can take, but there's especially moments where if you're quick about doing some really out there spin dash jumps that can be kind of dangerous seeming, you can just skip certain paths to the level design in ways that I really enjoy. This is something I really enjoy doing in 3D Sonic in specific, that I'm really glad Frontiers let you do in its cyberspace stages, albeit they got a little carried away with that idea in the free update. Was it Beyond the Horizon, I think? Which, you know, I'm not going to talk about Frontiers for a little bit, probably. So, yeah, that update was neat. They got a little carried away with some of the platforming, though. I liked that it was difficult, but there's points where the precision they wanted was a little much. And that's all I'll say about that until I inevitably reach Frontiers in like 20 years. Assuming YouTube and the world still exists at that point, which it probably will, hopefully. As for things Red Mountain's got going on, it's got plaids that'll crumple as you walk over them. It's got a lot of humming attack change, lava bubbles that'll pierce out of the ground and do all that kind of stuff to you. But it's also got a lot of switches you need to press to activate certain pathways, as well as pulleys that'll lift you to the next section of the stage. Which, again, if you're good about knowing where those are, you can get to them a little bit earlier than you're sort of intended to. Though I don't like this platform type right here. I don't know why this section's always just felt weirdly slow compared to the rest of the stage. It just feels kind of weird. And something I actually noticed on this very playthrough, I have never noticed this Trail of Rings before, which leads you to 2 extra lives. First time I'd ever actually found that route. Neat. That's something I like about this game. Not quite to the same extent as like Sonic 3, for instance, but there's every now and then a new section of a stage I find that I had never really explored before. There's something about that that I really like about games like this, no matter what the series may be. Like, there's sort of still new jumps in, like, Mario 64 or Sunshine I see people do now and again. I go, oh, yeah! This game's 3D. You can do that jump to get over there like that, huh? Now that we're inside of Red Mountain, lava itself becomes our main hazard outside of enemies. And it will start rising eventually, but something to keep in mind, it doesn't rise constantly. It only starts raising at certain points of level design to begin with. And it'll seldom ever rise to the point where it'll make you guarantee a death, effectively. It's just a ring loss, like with most hazards in the game. It's not instant kill. There's very few instant kill things in this game to begin with outside of bottomless pits. I think things can crush you, but that's kind of rare. Though if there's one thing this stage especially goes to prove it on just like even a flatter aspect, the spin dash in Sonic Adventure 1's really good for letting you skip over level design like that. To the point where it actually makes some Lightspeed dash ring chains completely useless, effectively. There's a reason that in Adventure 2, they nerfed the spin dash to the point where while it's still good for getting a lot of speed, you don't get nearly as much air out of it as you can here. You can still do some pretty absurd stuff with it, though, I still won't lie to you. But I'll save a lot of that for when I eventually get to Adventure 2, which, actually, a fun little fact. Years ago, I uploaded a video to this channel that was me messing around, I think in like Brawl, when that was still like the most recent Smash Brothers, with a Dazzle capture card. I initially tried to do console LPs at that point, and I wanted to do Sonic Adventure 2, but the audio corrupted, so I just canceled that there. So the fact I'm getting to Adventure 1 about a decade later is kind of funny to me.
Hey, Sonic!
Tails, I'm glad you're okay. Ready to roll, champ? Let's go!
Roger!
But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. And in part 5, we're going to once again try to tackle the egg carrier and see if we can board it this time around. See you guys then.